My wife over there, Denise Gomez, we live in Watsonville, and we are volunteer docents at the Castro Adobe State Historic Park. Now, at one point, I was invited to write a song for the Monarch Festival, the Migration Festival over here at Natural Bridges. So I wrote this song for that event to welcome the monarchs back to Natural Bridges over there. But this being a community reads event, the book that we have read and we have discussed, the events around centers on monarch migration and climate change. So my song addresses both of those things as well as human migration. The second verse is in Spanish, and in translation it goes, "A monarch of the air and a migrant I am. Mountains and miles you will see me crossing. And then when the springtime comes, I feel the warmth of the earth, and I return to my labors, to the cycle of my birth. And then in wintertime, I join with my compatriots, and I find my liberty in the shadow of a tree." Thank you for inviting me, and extraordinary work on the walls here. I've really been enjoying it. And I sat over there because it's right by Jim's monarch portraits here, and you see this little larva, and what does it turn into? You want the shirt? I think you have to go to a state park, possibly Natural Bridges, to get a shirt like this. But here we go, Monarch, Monarcas, bilingual song by yours truly.
Monarch in the summer, monarch in the fall, migrating together, 500,000 strong. California winter, keep us safe and warm, or in Mexican mountains, happily we swarm. Our beautiful colors, glorious for everyone to see. Across generations, flying we are free. Across generations, flying we are free. Monarca del aire, inmigrante soy, montañas y villas, cruzando me voy, y a la primavera siento el calor, renovando el ciclo de nuestro labor. Llegando el invierno, entre mis compadres descansa la sombra de un árbol. Es mi libertad, la sombra de un árbol. Es mi libertad. We are not illegal, borders we shall cross. No solo migrante, somos mucho más. Cambiando el clima, nosotros también. Will humanity save us? Show us how and where. Our beautiful colors, glorious for everyone to see. Yo soy mariposa, tu porvenir. Yo soy mariposa y tu porvenir.
Those last two lines go, Yo soy mariposa y tú porvenir. I am a butterfly and I am your future. What happens to the creatures around us, the earth, the sun, the air, the soil, the water that supports them, their future is our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Ann Hazels of the Radius Gallery is going to give you some housekeeping info. Very quickly, let me explain a couple. Are all of you familiar with our community reads? Our community reads is a program that Friends of the Aptos Library started about 8 years ago, where we select a book. Well, we put a group of books out to the community and say, which one do you want to read? And so this year it is Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver, which is set in the mountains of Tennessee. It's about monarch butterflies and migration going off course due to climate change and so forth. That's why you see so many butterflies here in the park. And we're going to be talking about nature photography. In addition to the Friends of the Atlas Library, now a lot of other branches in the Santa Cruz system involves Capitola and Scotts Valley and Selva, if I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. But it's a much larger thing than it was initially. If you do not have a copy of this year's calendar, there are a bunch of them over there. This will tell you about upcoming events. And since Bob mentioned the Migration Festival at Natural Bridges, it's on the calendar. Now, it's not an official Our Community Reads event, but it is on the 8th of February at 11 a.m. and it's admission free at Natural Bridges, so it's hard to go over that part. But there's lots of other things coming out. This is the 4th event so far, and we go on into March. So let me very quickly give a plug for what's happening here. These are photographs that I took that are actually the page backgrounds for the calendar. If you look at the calendar, you'll actually say, oh, there's butterflies back there. Those are the pictures. They are available to you and we're going to raffle them off. All the proceeds go to the Friends of the Aptos Library. Tickets are available over there. If you didn't get one already, we'll wait, give you some time afterwards. Go for it. Be great if you would. Okay, so we have, why don't we dim the lights a tad? And can this get going again? Or, yeah. And we have a trio of nature photographers, local nature photographers. Seraphina Landgrebe, Kevin Lohman, and Bruce Leventhal. About singling out Kevin, you may have seen his name on the side of a bus going around town. He's got a great horned owl, isn't it? Yeah. He's got a great horned owl on one of the buses. No, he's not a great horned owl. That's not a great horned owl. So let's start off just each of you just sort of one by one, give us a little background and start off with why photography. What's photography for you? Why are you doing it?
Hi, good evening. Honored to be here, excited to present my work and be among other fellow photographers. Why photography? It has been a lifelong adventure, starting with Ansel Adams and a 4x5 sheet film camera I started out where I'd go out in the field with nature. I would get 10 images for that afternoon. Play film. Now, with digital imaging, I come back with 2,000 or 3,000 images. Because I'm in nature and I'm photographing birds. And it's the last thing I'd ever thought I would photograph, but it feeds my soul. It's a way for me to get out of the world and experience a whole nother life.
Hi everybody, I'm Kevin, and I got into photography about 45 years ago. I was, back at that time, I was a student at Moss Landing Marine Labs, and I picked up a camera so I could start documenting some of the research that was going on, and then I got into photographing people around the Marine Lab. And then when I went up to Seattle, I continued doing people photography, some event photography, a few weddings. My apologies to those people who had their weddings photographed by me. But I had a lot of fun, did some photojournalism. And then about 7 years ago, I got into wildlife photography. And my intent with my photography, such as the ones that are up here, is to show a different perspective on wildlife that not everybody gets to see or experience, and try to show it in a special way. So that is what drives me, to know that others are getting to enjoy these moments, and it also gives me an excuse to get out and spend some quiet time in nature, so, which is very important to me.
Hi there. I'm Bruce Leventhal, and I'm actually new to the area. I moved here from Minnesota in April. I actually grew up in Southern California, so it's coming home after many, many years. I began as a photographer in high school. So like many of you, you might have taken a class in high school on photography and learned how to work in a darkroom and process your own film. And my first beginning with photography was becoming enamored with the equipment, because I thought these were the coolest things in the world. I ended up becoming a researcher in the Pribilof Islands in Alaska. And the PI, the head professor, asked if anybody knew how to use this thing. And I had a camera, and he's like, I need somebody to document the birds. And so I volunteered to do that because I understood the basics. And that initiated my love affair with nature photography. And that was in 1986. And I've been photographing many forms of nature since that time. And I still love it. And I can repeat everything else that Kevin said, but I won't. But I will say one thing. I look at photography as something for me to do and engage with the natural world. That's all I want to do, is take walks in nature, and it gives me something to focus on.
Once you hang on to that, because I'll come back to you and we'll just go in reverse order. Quickly, if you haven't looked at the far wall, that's Kevin's work over there, and then Bruce, and then Seraphina. So they've got pieces hanging on the wall here. Bruce, do you want to talk about either a particular picture in your slideshow, or in the wall, and the story you're telling, or what the photograph means to you?
Sure. I'd like to, if it's okay, I'd like to pick two pictures. I'll talk about one that's on the wall and one that is in the slide feed. And they're very different pictures.
Which one on the slide?
It'll be the bear. So it'll be there's the bear. There we go. So if you've not seen the three pieces in the middle are mine. I'd just like you to point to the picture of the screech owl. So if you're all the way in the back, you're going to see bark. That's all you're going to see. But if you're in the front, you'll see that there's an owl in here. And the reason why I want to point to that picture is it's about the process of how you find and see things in nature. And I was already sharing this story with somebody else. I had gone to Southeast Texas to photograph birds in a blind, and it was an artistic type of photography where you're photographing reflections of birds as they're coming down to an ephemeral pool of water, and it's a fantastic experience. And I was sitting next to another person, and he had asked me, "Did you see the screech owl?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen the screech owl." And he asked, "Are you interested?" And of course, of course I want to see the screech owl, right? And so he said, "Well, I'm not going to tell you where it is, but it's on this trail. And it's within the first 200 meters of the trail." And so I'm like, 200 meters, that's not bad, that's 2 football fields, I'll be able to find it. Took me 4 hours. I passed this owl no fewer than 10 times. No fewer than 10 times. When I did find it, its eyes were closed. So I have many pictures of it with its eyes closed. And I'm like, well, I'm not going anywhere. So I found the owl, I'm gonna wait. And so it was 2 hours of waiting. So it was a 6-hour shot. And what the owl did was, it opened its eyes and then it closed it. That was it. And I had, 5 frames per second on my camera at that time. And I got one good shot. So that speaks to the process, right? If you are really committed to nature photography and trying to do something different, see something different, sometimes there's a lot more sweat labor than you realize, right? It's a lot more than just buying a plane ticket to go somewhere. The best nature photographers, they take advantage of those opportunities and they wait. They're patient people. The bear shot was a similar one. This is in Banff, Canada, and my wife was a photographer as well. We worked together, and we saw this bear lumbering on the road, and straight ahead of us, about 20 feet ahead, there was a big sign that said "No stopping." So we were not allowed to stop. The bear was hundreds of meters, and Tammy turned to me and she said, "We gotta wait till the bear hits that sign." And so we pulled over and stuck our car behind a tree, and we hit our signs. We waited, and all I wanted was the bear walking by the tree, by the sign. That's what I was waiting for. And then it decided to play with the cone. And then it looked at itself. So I've named it the sentient bear. Patience.
So I'll talk about one print here and one image there.
Which one of these?
Let's go with the lava.
Okay.
Well, I'll start with this one over here. So, main reason why I want to talk about this one. So this is a bunch of monarch butterflies. They all have their eyes closed. And waited for 6 hours. It wouldn't open. But I wanted to mention this because, we love our local parks. We love natural bridges, Lighthouse Field, down in Pacific Grove, and we've been very blessed to have butterflies return periodically. The last several years have been really tough when you compare to 40 years ago where there were hundreds of thousands of butterflies. And we're lucky to see some butterflies, and this year was really, really challenging. There were butterflies earlier in the season, like in the November time frame, and then they all pretty much disappeared from natural bridges, and there were maybe a couple hundred, 200 or 300 that were hanging out at Lighthouse Field. This was 2 years ago in January, and I was at Lighthouse Field looking for owls, great horned owls. And while I was there, waiting for it to get dark, and I was down by the platform on the little boardwalk down at Natural Bridges, I looked up in the corner of the park and I saw this nice cluster with light. The end of day light was just starting to hit this cluster. And I'd never seen a beautiful cluster like this one at any of our local parks. I've only seen photographs of these. So I think it's just nice to know that, and I've been going there for 2-3 weeks in a row, pretty much every day to look for owls, and I hadn't seen anything like this. And then the next day when I went, there was no cluster. So it just happens at these moments, and that's what putting yourself out there, visiting a place over and over again, even if it's something convenient to get to, like natural bridges, there's so much beautiful wildlife we can experience in our own backyard. And that's what this message tells to me, that there's hope for the butterflies, and we do what we can to kind of help continue their existence and see what happens, and hope each year that gets better and better. The image over here was not in our backyard, thank goodness. I was down in the Galapagos Islands in April, and it just so happened that there had been an eruption in March on Fernandina Island out in the Galapagos, and we were on a scheduled tour, and this was in April, and our guide reached out to some folks to find out, was the lava still flowing? And they said, well, it may or may not be visible because the island had cooled over, so there were just lava tubes on the island. So you weren't really seeing much of the lava flowing down from the mountain, but there should still be some lava flowing into the water. So we were on a large boat that held 16 guests, so not too large, it was a nice sized boat. And our captain did an amazing job just bringing us in, not too close, so you couldn't feel the heat or anything, and we were at a very safe distance. But I had a long lens, and we were on the boat, and the boat's kind of bobbing around in the water. And I just focused on the lava and made a number of images, and I really enjoyed this particular image. You've got the steam coming up from the water. You've got the lava, the hot lava as it's flowing down the island, dripping into the ocean, and then the reflection off of the water, because this had gotten just a little bit after sunset, and where the glow was really shining. So you can go to extreme locations and be lucky, because you couldn't plan this at all. And I have no idea if it's still what's going on there at this time. It's probably done. But just to have that moment with nature, to see this and smell it, you can smell the sulfur in the air. And it was quite an experience, one I'll never forget. So I wanted to share.
Something that I did not share is that.
Seraphina, hang on a second, have you lost the mic?
Ah, there we go, is that on? Okay, something that I did not share when
No.
we're missing ourselves.
That's not on.
It's on.
Okay, eat it.
Can you hear me now? Hand me the other.
Here's another one.
Hold on, Chris.
Like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems not to be connecting.
So, is that connecting? I am pressing the button. The light is green. Possibly you can hear me without the microphone. Thank you. One thing that I did not share with you is that my love of photography is also to teach and to share how to take an image and what it's about. Number one, I learned from Ansel Adams many, many years ago. The number one thing, who might know? Light. It's all about the light. And this example of a white-faced ibis really illustrates that, because we were on the way to Merced and look in the field. Is there any way to turn the lights on for a moment on the images? Can we turn the lights on the images? Because it's a black bird, and it's very hard to see the iridescence, and it's about the light No, you can't turn the lights on. Okay, so, this is the story. The story, we're driving on our way to try to photograph sandhill cranes, one of my favorite birds. And I'm looking in a field, and there's just all these black dots. And I'm going, Mark, stop, look at that. Are those crows? There were hundreds of them, never seen anything like it. Pulled over, got our cameras out, and oh my God, they're white-faced ibises with these pointy beaks. 200-300 of them. They were foraging. And then, all of a sudden, explosion. They took off. So being at the right place at the right time, and with the light hitting the wings, if you come up close, there's an iridescence. There's greens, there's browns, yellow, teal. And you cannot normally see this if the light is not hitting it correctly, just like a hummingbird. You probably see that where, you know, the colors change. So it's about light and also having your camera set to the right settings. And just as a little FYI, my camera is always ready to go. In the car, camera's in the lap. Oh my God, stop. And one needs to be, you know, we all use these terms, we're out there to shoot. Well, we're not shooting guns. And we are hunters in a sense, because we're seekers, and we're looking for that special moment. And for me, that was an incredible moment. And we did get to Merced Wildlife and found the sandhill cranes, and I had to share this image because for me, it's jumping. They jump for joy. They pick up twigs and they play. And this is the thing about photography, being out in nature. It brings me great joy. And most of all, my dear friend Linda is here. It's our job to have fun. We must have fun in spite of it all. And the slide that I will share, let's go to what? The moonbow. It's not a rainbow, it's at Yosemite. And you might look and say, oh, that's a rainbow. There it is. This is the hardest thing I have ever photographed in my life. And believe me, I thought birds were hard. There's no way I ever thought I would photograph a bird. And here's kind of the extreme opposite. I go out to photograph birds and like, you know, you're saying you need a lot of patience. And Bruce, you know, sometimes you can spend 2-3 hours waiting. Well, this had to do with nature, and it's by the light of the full moon at Lower Yosemite Falls. It's not a rainbow. It's called a moonbow. Anybody ever been there to see this? People from all over the world come to see it. And if you do not have a polarizing lens, you see a silver arc. Silver. And this is between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock. And here's the deal. You cannot have a cloud covering the full moon. You will not get the light refraction happening. Okay, there's more to the story. It gets harder. So here you are with your camera, tripod. I have 2 tarps. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, 2 tarps. One tarp over me, another one over the camera. I am photographing literally in a shower. A shower. Soaking wet because the water and the spray from the waterfalls is hitting you constantly. And this was taken around between 11 and 12 midnight. So the rock is lit by the light of the full moon. And the moonbow that comes up and it rises, it moves. So this image, really, you have to calculate your exposure. It varied between 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 10 seconds. So if you take your image, the longer you're exposing it, guess what happens to your lens? Wet, you get all that spray. So it's a fine balance. And it took, we were out there for probably an hour, and I got 2 or 3 great images, because after every image you take, guess what you have to do? Wipe down the moisture. And there is steam, and there's your breath on it. And it takes like 3, 4, 5 minutes just to clean the surface of your lens. Then you have what's called it's a filter. It is the polarizing filter. And it has to be in the exact position. Guess what happens when you wipe your screen? It moves. So you really try hard. I try hard to not move that, because when you turn your filter, you don't see the colors. And then the other magic with photography, and I think many of you are photographers, is that when you come home with your images, it's like Christmas. It's unwrapping a present. What did I get? What worked? What didn't work? And this big surprise was that there were two. It's a double rainbow. And look at the colors. They're opposite. I had no idea that when you get a double, not rainbow, it's a moonbow, that it's the last color is red-orange, then you have red-orange, and then you have green. And you can see the water flow, which is probably between 5 and 8 seconds, that exposure. So, made it through that. Got soaking wet. Protected the cameras though. And once again, just in showing a comparison of what it takes. That was about an hour. I came home with 10 shots. And this image with the ibis, that was 5 minutes. Came home with 600 shots from just that. Thank you.
So, Bruce, let's start with you. Actually, Lohman, would you go back to Bruce's pictures? There's one of them is fascinating, and it's actually not remotely local. That one. Nope.
Yeah. No, that's so sweet.
This one here. I'm actually going to ask you about, or all of you, about local places for photography, but this one caught my eye. To me, it looks like, I asked Bruce at one point, I said, are you half underwater when you took this? Because it looks like something underwater, and there's the water line and so forth, and he's not.
How many of you have seen this in person? Yeah, this is an icon. I have been to Iceland 3 times now, and I was in Iceland in June one year to do birds and landscapes, and I was in Iceland in August to do landscapes and experience camping in Iceland. And I had an opportunity this past November to return. I've never been there during the winter, and I kind of consider myself a winter photographer, having lived in Minnesota for 34 years. You kind of find this love-hate relationship. And so I had an opportunity to go and photograph northern lights and ice caves, and neither of those were really fantastic this last November. But I got to visit a place that I'd always wanted to go. It's called Stalkness, which is the region, and the mountain Vestrahorn. And Vestrahorn, this has been in many, many movies, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, those type of adventure movies. And this was a very, very windy day, and we were at sunset. I was there with another small group of people. And what's interesting is it's a black sand beach that then has the ocean and then the mountain range behind it. And very often the mountain range is covered in clouds, and people get very upset when they can't see the entire mountain. But I look at it as an opportunity. And so Seraphina talked about using a polarizer. They use something called a 10-stop neutral density filter. And so if you're not familiar with what that does, it essentially makes light dark. And it makes it very dark. And the reason why you would use something like this is to try to create a very long exposure so that your shutter stays open for more than 10 seconds. In this case, my shutter was open for 90 seconds. And what I was wanting to get was the fluidity of the clouds passing through the mountain range and the motion of the wind acting on the grass. And so to do this, I had to put my camera in the black sand, which is horrible for cameras. And then kind of, because it was on a tripod, but it was all the way down at the very bottom, and it's a very long exposure. And yeah, I find the photo pleasing. That's why I wanted to share.
And it's a solid neutral density, not a graduate.
Solid,
not
yeah, I
not
think it's great filters, so, no, it's a solid neutral density. The sand takes on this lovely texture, it's got lots of shadows and lines, it's very fluid looking, it looks like water, it sort of moves like water in the wind. And so, yeah.
If you were gonna tell people here where to go, politely, in the immediate, not in Iceland, because that's not an option for many of us, but locally, what's a rich place for you to go?
So I'm not going to choose the one that I think Kevin will choose, because it's like home base for him. But instead, I'm going to choose the one that has just had lots of meaning for me. My wife, my mother moved here in 2012. She was in Pasadena, and I would come and visit her, and she would entice me to leave the comforts of cold Minnesota winter to visit her in December by saying, you know, you can see sea otters if you go to the Elkhorn Slough. And so I am a huge fan of the Elkhorn Slough. I hike it, I walk it, I drive it, kayak it, I charter, I go on chartered trips. It is such a wonderfully diverse, beautiful spot. My heart was breaking a week and a half ago when the fire caught in the battery storage facility, and you probably have all heard the news reports that it looks like there are high levels of lead and cadmium now in the soils, and so we don't know what the impact of that's going to be in the coming years, but it is going to have an impact. I'm a biology teacher. I've done a lot of studying in biology. It's going to have an impact, and so we've got to protect these things. These are cherished locations. You can do a lot of wildlife photography with modest equipment in the Elkhorn Slough.
Kevin, let me ask you about, Lohman, did you bring up the elephant? Very quick, the Sally Lightfoot, was that in the Galapagos also?
The elephant?
No, the Sally Lightfoot.
Yes, the Sally Lightfoot was on an island,
Is that
Rabida
Rabida?
Island
Yeah.
in Galapagos. This red sand.
All right, speaking of red, let's see the elephant. Tell us about that.
So I was very lucky to go on a safari this past September, and I spent a month in Africa. 10 days looking for big cats and great migration, and then 10 days looking for elephants. And on this particular day, we were in Savo East National Park, and in Savo, they have this very red soil. It's an iron-rich soil. And elephants will take dust baths to help them. They can't put sunscreen on, and they need a lot of bottles of sunscreen. Whereas the sand and mud and soil is readily available, so they'll cover themselves with wet mud that will dry, and then they will also spray themselves using their trunk to gather dust and spray it all over themselves. So we had this opportunity. We were in our vehicle, and we were pretty close to a number of elephants, and this one was moving its ears. So elephants will flap their ears in and out. There's like an air conditioner for them that helps cool the themselves off. So the left ear, its left ear in this particular photo was out. And so I was trying to time my photo so that I could photograph it with the ear out, which gives this bigger palette. And it was all red from the sand that it had been bathing with. And I focused on the eye, so the eye is in focus, but the trunk, the front of the face, and the ear are out of focus. But when you look at the image, for me, because the eye is in focus, it brings the whole image to be in focus to me. But I also like that in addition to these colors, which were so amazing, there's this incredible texture that you get to see on the wide face. And I like only having part of the face showing because it gives you this mystery. What's going on the other side? You know, is it a direct mirror image of it, but the light is coming from one direction? So you get this light coming in on the one side. And one of the other tips that we got from the guide on the tour that we were on is, if you can avoid it, never photograph an elephant from the top down because it diminishes their size. So if you can either be at eye level or below, and here I was actually a little below eye level, it brings out their magnificent stature and size that you don't get to experience when you photograph standing up, or if the elephants are down below. It's just nowhere near the same impact. But I'm really glad you picked this one because I enjoy this one quite a bit.
Okay, your turn, since Bruce kind of hinted at it, what's your place? What's your happy spot in the local area?
Yes, so yeah, there's quite a few spots. In addition to Elkhorn Slough, and I work very closely with those folks. It's a wonderful organization. They do so much to preserve the land, and you know, we try to support them financially. And I did a photo sale recently where I donated my sales, 100% of the sales, to the Elkhorn Slough, because it's so important that we all do what we can to help out, and that was one way I could help. And that's, you know, something I want to say is that there's a lot going on with the nation right now that we can't control, but this is something I can help with locally that will make a difference, and hopefully they can, you know, continue to improve the environment in light of things that happen. But the place that I want to talk about that I think Bruce was alluding to was Natural Bridges. I go to Natural Bridges very often. 9 times out of 10 when I go, I may not see anything of interest. But then that 10th time when I go, it's just some magic is going on. Whether it's early morning at sunrise and there may be snowy egrets on the beach, or at sunset there's snowy egrets on the beach. And the birds are used to people, so at sunset there could be 100 people on the beach, that little small beach at Natural Bridges, and the birds are pretty much ignoring them, except for the people that bring their dogs down and run around, or riding their scooters on the beach, whatever. It's a public beach, and it's a fun place to go. And I also enjoy the owls that are there, and if you want to switch over to the owl shot, that was also at Natural Bridges, and in addition to butterflies. And this was a young juvenile owl this past season. And in the back of the photograph from where you're seating, on the right, that's mom, and on the left, behind it, is another juvenile. But this one took off and flew straight at me. And I felt like I needed to duck, because when you're looking through the long lens, it gets big very fast. But you see the feet are fuzzy. It had just taken off, so I hadn't pulled the feet back yet, and it was getting ready to land behind me someplace. So it's just a magical place of so much you can see there. And I donated a number of owl images that I've taken there, including this one, to Natural Bridges, so they can have a little book, a flip book that they can show some of the owl shots that have done. I've got some other photos that I want to share with them as well, so that visitors can enjoy some of these moments that most of them, it's fun when you're standing there and there's an owl overhead and I'm looking at it and people are just walking by, they have no clue there's an owl right over their head. It's just, it really is a fun place to go, and you never know what you're going to see there.
How about the condor picture of Seraphina? I think I know exactly where you are. And in fact, you're ignoring all those signs that say do not loiter, park, or anything. I'm surprised you didn't get busted. How, that is a California condor, right?
Yes, that's.
Was that just pure happenstance, or did you happen to have one with you?
I'll tell you, can you hear me? I'll tell you this, the story with this. What, going to Big Sur, photograph the waterfalls, and of course condors are that's their territory. And some of you, I'm sure, have been on Highway 1. And you're coming down the mountain, a curve, and as you go up, this is Little Sur River. And there are signs there that says it's private, you cannot go in or hike. However, when you get to the top, there's a big place you can park your car. It's very big, there's a fence there. And I always look, so if anybody is looking for condors, when you come to the Little Sur River, this is their flyway from the Pinnacles. They come right across through, if you look, I guess it's east, through that slit of the mountains, they come right through there. And I was told this. And I've been there many times. Today they came through. There were about 5, 6 of them. And they were on the beach eating a dead carcass. And so I got all those shots. But I'm always trying to go for birds in flight. It's great to get a bird sitting on a perch, but the most exciting thing is action. And so there were condors flying around right above you, like little airplanes, impossible to get because I have a 800mm lens. And well, this actually might have been, this is probably the 400mm because, and I cropped to place that condor in a point of impact. So the bird's flying around, and you know, I would get many images, part of the wing, part of the head, but yeah, and so this one was the shot. And the others on the beach, they were great, but they're eating, and they're big black birds, and so that's the California condor. It has a tag, I'm not sure if you can read the number on it. And just a point of interest, I'm rather proud. I was one of the first people to photograph the first condor to lay an egg at the Pinnacles. I would hike up to the Pinnacles. It's an overlook. The ranger would have a telescope right there in the crevice. It was not successful though because, and then they planted another egg. I don't know if you know anything about the condors or follow them. They're all members. They have names, and they have been restored due to the hard work of the society that has maintained them.
How about your favorite place in addition to Big Sur?
In addition to...
Or it could be Big Sur if you want to.
Pardon?
Or it could be Big Sur if that is your favorite place.
It's one of them, and it's hard to make a choice. Kevin mentioned Natural Bridges, which is great. Elkhorn Slough. I have places that I go to frequently, once or twice a week, to photograph. But since this spot has not been mentioned, I'm going to talk about Merced Wildlife Refuge. And I must say, I've been to Yosemite many, many times. On the way, there'd be a sign on the road saying Merced Wildlife Refuge. I thought, oh, I wonder what that is. Once I got into birds, I discovered a whole mecca, a world, totally into itself. It changes with the seasons, October, November, December, January, February, and then even midsummer. The terrain changes. It's a wetlands that is run by the the National Wildlife. Who runs that?
Is it National Wildlife?
It's a
National Park?
National Wildlife Refuge, and the Fish and Game.
Oh, it's California. Yeah.
That's California. So you get quite thousands and thousands of birds. There's probably 15, 20,000 of snow geese that come from Canada, Alaska. You get sandhill cranes, many variety of ducks that you don't see right here. And then you have raptors, northern harriers, white-faced ibis, many shorebirds, and it's always an adventure, no matter how many times you've been there, like going to any location. What is going to come up for me? What am I going to find? One thing too that I would just like to add, and like Bruce, you were in a spot that probably has been photographed a lot, and many people have been to. And where was I? I was in New Mexico in a slot canyon. When the light comes down, you've probably seen images. The light's coming through in a red glow, and there are thousands of people that come there. And I'm with my friend, and I had to go because I had photographed it, and I go, you know, so many people have taken this shot, even in Yosemite. My friend said, Seraphina, you haven't taken the shot. It's true. It's true. It doesn't matter because it's one's experience and process, the feelings that come up when you're in a spot and a location. And then one needs the wherewithal to keep it together so you're not so excited that you're shaking the camera or you're jumping when the bird jumps off of the perch because you're so at one with your subject. That's the magic too of photography, to become one with whatever it is. The clouds in the sky, the wildlife, the tides, the ocean.
You mentioned 800 millimeter lenses. Mine isn't quite that large, but they don't get any bigger over time, unfortunately.
No, I'm a small person. My hands, arthritis, a lot of pain. I have a 400 millimeter fixed lens with a 2x converter, which means that 400, oh my God, it's now 800, and it's light. I converted completely to mirrorless, and it's been a game changer because I've had heavy lenses. Pardon?
What I was going to ask you, are for people in the room who don't happen to have a 400 millimeter lens with a 2-time converter, what are their options? What can people do with? I mean, to start with, maybe is there anything you can do with a phone?
Not that much. You can. You can. Well, it depends on how
And
close.
I'll ask the rest of you the same
Yeah,
question.
okay. It
So.
depends on how close you are to the subject. And if you're there for ID, and a lot of times you really can get a decent image, but it's not that easy. And I'd like some opinions about some of the attachments. I've seen these things, right? You can put a telephoto attachment to a phone, and with wildlife, I shoot completely manual, except for the focus. Manual shutter speed, f-stop, and ISO. I am an old-time film person, and I like that control. And I believe there is a way that you can get the control with the iPhone.
Yeah, I'll touch on equipment. Don't do what I do, which is get all the equipment. Although I mean, for me, I consider it part of a toolbox. You know, just like a carpenter has a variety of tools that they need for a particular circumstance. You know, I have a variety of lenses and cameras that work for me. A lot of it comes down to either budget, you know, how much are you able or willing to spend on camera equipment, and weight. You know, how much are you willing to carry around, and then how much time are you willing to spend editing images. Most people don't want to spend a lot of money. Most people don't want to carry around heavy equipment, and you know, would rather sit at home and enjoy their family or talk about the outings they've been on and not spend a lot of time editing images. So a phone is a fabulous tool, and it just means that you maybe are not going to get, you know, the condor in flight images with a close shot of them or an owl flying straight at you like I shared. But you can get these wonderful landscape images that are beautiful, and more the photo competitions are looking for like a bird in a landscape. In fact, Audubon added a new category this last year to their photography awards contest, which was specifically called Birds in Landscape, because they loved seeing the 600 millimeter photographs, but they really wanted to understand more what is the environment that these birds live in. And I was fortunate enough, I submitted an image last year that was selected as the winner of the Birds in Landscape category for Audubon. And it was a quail over on the other side of the Homeless Garden Project out by the Seymour Center in that area, which is out in the field. And it just had these layers. And if I was able to get a little bit closer, that was with a longer lens, but if I was able to get a little bit closer, that would have been a beautiful photograph with an iPhone or whatever phone you use on your camera. And I had somebody reach out to me the other day who had asked, hey, you know, I have a budget of a couple $100, and you know, what could I do for a camera? And I do a lot of photography with my phone. And I said, well, I think you should look at some of the attachments that you can get for a phone. I mean, it's not going to be the same quality as a $6,000 camera with a $15,000 lens, but it's going to be pretty darn good. And I've also been playing around a little bit with the macro features of my phone, and it can do amazing jobs with macro. And there's some people that I follow on Facebook that they only use their phone. And they have some brilliant stuff. I said, I want you to teach me how to do some of these things because they're so good. So, yeah, don't let the equipment limit you. What you want to do is work with what you have and put yourself in situations where you can, master that. And when you get to the point and say, this is no longer doing it for me, then you can consider upgrading. But now you know why you want to upgrade. Don't just buy a camera because you want a camera. Buy a camera because the camera you currently have isn't doing what you need to do. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. But there are some
very quickly, do you want to just, if anybody doesn't know what macro is, you want to explain macro?
Sure. Macro is where you're getting in much closer to the subject. So, for example, if you want to photograph a housefly and have it fill the screen, you want to get really close to it so you can see the detail on the wings and in the eyes. And that would be a macro shot, where you're getting it really close. And there's a lot of definitions of that, where you get one-to-one ratios and all these other things, which I don't even understand. So I try not to talk about the technical aspect of it. It's just having the ability to get in really close to see the detail on the head of a pin or dime or whatever it is that you want to photograph. And there's a lot of insects. There are a lot of birds that do get close at bird feeders. There's crabs. Crab shots that you can do some fun things with your phone. So
Is there any micro app you suggesting or recommendation from the iPhone?
So, the phone itself comes with a decent app, and that works pretty well. When you get into macro mode, it'll switch over, and I think it's like the iPhone 15 and 16 do that. I think the 14 might also do it. I don't remember. Then there's also some third-party applications you can install on your phone that give you more control over the cameras that are in the phone itself. So, you might play around with one or two of those. And most of those applications are not that expensive, $5 or $10. You easily spend that. If you buy a latte. I don't drink coffee, so I don't buy latte because I can't afford to. It's darn equipment. Whatever works for you. I think it's play around with it, explore, and there are groups that you can join on Facebook and learn some more about that. I'll also mention, I'm a member of a photography group, so for anybody who's a little more serious about photography, it's called CODA, or Community of Digital Artists, and there are more than just photographers there are digital artists there. Sharon is a member, and she does some amazing work digitally. And we're all members of CODA. We meet once a month in Scotts Valley, where you can do a Zoom call and join in. And if you're interested in that, just go to our website. It's codasantacruz.com, CODA Santa Cruz, all one word, .com, and check it out and see what we're up to, and reach out if you have any questions.
So I'm going to throw a cliche out for you. The best camera is the one you have with you, right? That's our cliche. That's what the phones have done for us, right? I don't do iPhone photography. My phone is my phone and my texting device, but I do use it for a couple things. If I'm in a new location and I want to remember that location, I'll take a picture of it, and it's geotagged, so that way I can find that spot. Again, it's really important if you hike a lot, and if you're like me, I get lost because I'm kind of an absent-minded person. I get really into, I'll see a bird and I'll start following the bird, and I'll see a deer and I'll start following the deer, and the next thing I know, I don't know where I am. And so, I often take a picture of my car. It's a good tip if you're going on a trail, so that you can find your car back. But I use my phone for geolocation. I also I have a little quiet project that I've been working on, which is on roadkill, and the phones are perfect for that because I can stop the car, run out really quickly, grab a shot, and go back into the car, and hopefully not join the roadkill.
Yeah, really. Become the roadkill.
The new phones are absolutely amazing. So I have a very good friend who was a professional wildlife photographer, made a living at it in the 70s and 80s. He still has all of his super expensive gear, but he's been using his phone more and more. And so if you're interested in landscape photography, if you're interested in macro photography, if you're interested in kind of capturing the whole scene, you're in Yellowstone, there's a herd of buffalo, bison, herd of bison crossing, phones would be great work. It's just, I like to look through a viewfinder. I like the property. I will say this though, there are bargains. So if you're looking, if you've got a budget of $800 or so, and you are looking for very expensive gear at $800, the last generation, the stuff we call DSLRs, are on fire sale. And there are 2 outfits that specialize in used gear, and they rate their gear. They all have 6-month warranties, and you could buy a wildlife kit, a real sophisticated wildlife kit, for about $800. ADH, have no affiliation with it. guys know where to buy expensive stuff. I've got the same disease Kevin has. KEH.com, KEH.com, and then MPB.com. Both of these are places where you can buy used gear, and DSLRs are a bargain. It's all I shot for years and years and years, and I still use those photos, right? They're fantastic equipment, and they're undervalued tremendously.
And actually, you can, I just did this a few months ago. I had a DSLR that was good, but it didn't work as well as I wanted it to. I sold it to KEH, got the next generation of the same thing, and it makes all the difference. So I've got and mirrorless both. So, yeah. Do you want to start on anything about ethics in wildlife photography and?
I just wanted to add something about the cell phone and photography. It came to me upon this discussion, since we are discussing, right? I love my cell phone. I take lots of images with the cell phone. For photography, it's always been, particularly with DSL cameras, the feel in your hand. For me, with photography, I become one with my camera. I become one with what I'm working with. And I've had 4x5, very difficult because it's a big square box. Hasselblad was also a little difficult. With the DSL cameras, it's the grip and how you hold it, how you look up at the finder to take an image. And when cell phones came along, I thought, great, it's another tool. I could not relate to photographing basically with a pack of cigarettes. or this little thing big. It was very difficult for me. It was like I was shaking too. I needed something firm. So, when you're looking to get any piece of equipment, you could rent it before, try it, and see how it works for you. That's all. And it's for, maybe it's not for you. It's as to how it feels. This could be the greatest camera in the world. It's like, I shoot Nikon, I've hooked into all their lenses, et cetera, et cetera. There's a great camera that came out. It was way too big for my hand, the Z9. It's just way too big, too heavy. There's no way that I can take a picture. So again, it's about feel and how it works for you. Thank you.
All right, you want to tackle ethics and conservation and the role of the photographer, both how you relate to your subject and maybe their I've had people say, well, aren't you intruding on their life a little bit, and that kind of thing. How do you approach that?
Well, this is a loaded topic, right? I mean, this is photographers get criticized sometimes, and sometimes they don't. I think it's important for me to state the following. I did my bachelor's degree in ecology, evolution, and behavior. I was a researcher. I studied birds in Alaska for a number of years. I taught high school biology for 31 years. I did a master's in ecology and evolution and behavior at the University of Minnesota, and my study organism was monarch butterflies, fitting for this talk. So I've intervened with nature. Like if you are a field biologist, it's like the Heisenberg principle. You are a part of the system, right? And so you are impacting what you're seeing, even when you are not trying to impact what you're seeing. My philosophy as a photographer is to do no harm, and I tend to be a little bit more sensitive to getting within a zone of influence where I might be impacting behavior. But also, I'm human and I get excited when I have the opportunity to photograph a bobcat, or an elephant, or an owl. And so I look for what that animal, that organism, is doing in response to me. the fox, if you want to pull back to that fox, is a perfect example. This was photographed in Japan, so a year ago in Japan. And it was hunting. And I saw it hunting, and I sat down and I just followed it hunting with my camera. Not physically. I sat and let the fox do its thing. And then the fox decided that it wanted to be on a patch of hot rocks because it was cold. And it curled up within 15 feet of me. So I didn't move. I didn't impact the behavior. The fox was responding to its environment and was comfortable with me in its space. So I didn't feel the urge to get up and walk away. But if I'm out photographing something and it's leaving me, I'm approaching, and it's walking away, I'm gonna say that's it. I pushed that. So I want to say you need to be your own judge, but sometimes we're not good at that, right? Because we get stuck in the experience. What you want to do is you want to look to see if you're impacting the behavior. Are you altering the natural behavior of that organism? And if you are, you're too close, or you're in the wrong place. Grab your shot.
I agree with all that. There are ways that you can interact with wildlife that are minimally impactful. One way is to use a long lens, which is I pretty much use either a 400 or 600 lens with teleconverters that get me out to 800 or 1200 millimeters, and I typically hand hold my lenses so that I can be a smaller profile. I will also often lie down on the ground so that I'm not this big scary human standing there. I'm more like a lumpy rock on the ground. And I'll watch the wildlife, and if they are walking away from me, I'd say it's probably time to leave, or at least back up and sit still someplace and let them get used to me. I also go, like I mentioned natural bridges a few times. I've followed the owls there for years. And I think at some level they recognize us because we've gone there so often that they know that we're going to kind of stand in one place. We're not going to threaten them. And so like that one shot of the owl flying straight from, it just totally ignored me. Just flew to another branch right overhead. They were asking mom and dad to bring them food, and they are continuing about their business. And I think that is the most gratifying feeling to have as a nature photographer, to know that you're not directly impacting their behavior, or at least minimally impacting it. It is a balance, and I think the best thing you can do is, if you're in doubt, back off. Sit still and let the animals get used to you. And there are photographers that will do that over and over, and over time they'll have animals coming within feet of the photographer, but they've been going there daily for months. And then, whether it's Franz Lanting studying bonobos and gorillas, and where they'd spend all this time getting used to those animals and the animals getting used to them, that it gives you that opportunity to not threaten them and let them feel that they can move on. So I think that's pretty important. And the other thing you do is, like Merced, you're in your car, using your car as a blind. Animals are used to cars driving around, so if you're in a spot where you can stay in your car, whether you drive up to Point Reyes and you're in your car and you see an animal, like an elk on the side of the road, if you don't get out of the car, you're probably not going to disturb them much, if at all. So using a blind, such as your car, is another good way to consider minimally impacting the animals. And I also don't do calling. I don't call birds because that can stress them out. You know, they may be all settled down and then somebody starts calling them. They get all up, they want to see what's going on. Well, now they're spending energy that they didn't plan to spend. So I don't call, I don't bait, so I don't, you know, there are people that go off and photograph snowy owls and they're throwing mice out. So these nice head-on shots of owls flying in is because their behavior has been impacted. And because that often happens close to roads, and the owls see people, they start flying around the roads and then they get hit by cars. So, you know, don't bait, don't call. These are things that are part of the ethical approach to photographing wildlife that I adhere to.
Wonderful topic, and it's great hearing other photographers' feelings and impressions about the ethics of photography. Maybe some of you have heard about the ethics of birding. Have anybody read that list? Ethics of birding? It's somewhat similar. And number one is to not disturb a bird at its nest. Why is that? It's nesting. It's trying to create the future generation. And as a birder or as a photographer, it's really important to respect that, to respect their life, and at the same time, for us to see it and to record it and to have those images to share. I'm just going to talk about the ospreys at Harkin Slough. Maybe some of you have been to this nest. It's right by the dump. Painters go there. Hundreds of people have gone to Harkin Slough to, it's a national wildlife refuge as well. And every year the ospreys come and nest and create a family. And I've documented them for 5-6 years. Some have 10-15 years. The same pair, if they have existed, come to the same spot. Now, what is the ethics in photographing there? This is the nest from a distance. And you could also take this with a cell phone. Very easy. However, to get close-ups like this would be a whole other story with, and it's a wonderful place to photograph. We are on shore, we're at a fairly comfortable distance from the osprey nest. And one of the things that I really like to do is to go to a location and sit and let birds come to me. And be very quiet and silent, and most of all, can we do it? Can we really be invisible in nature? It's a practice. I think a lot of Native Americans would use this type of feeling. So at the osprey nest, I've been there many, many years, and I'm sure that you've been there. How many people have been to the osprey nest in Harkin Slough? Many. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience to get these shots. And I have a whole series of the nesting, mating on the nest, the juveniles flying off. And last year, that was very sad, one of them drowned. And that was very upsetting to the family. And I feel too that being there so many times that they know me, I will sing to them. Has anybody sang to a bird? Really, it works. It's like, what's going on? They're very, very aware of you and their environment more than we are. And I believe last year, after that baby drowned, that mother was so upset, and I had not had that experience over years. I'm not sure how far in distance, how many yards, do you think, from the nest at the shore. But that mother would fly around come. And I thought, oh, look, good, she's coming to say hi. But her call was not a happy one. And another birder pointed out, she was not happy. She just lost her child. And you can see this. And when one spends a lot of time photographing one bird, or a couple of birds, right? You have the male and the female, and then you have the juveniles. You will see actually the expressions in the eyes, their whole mannerism. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time. So ethics, respect the wildlife that you're photographing, respect the land, and work to be invisible wherever you are. One of the ways, if you can, wear darker, muted clothing, and try to be quiet in your mind, in your being, in your essence, to be really quiet, as though you were a bird or a bobcat, if you were that way.
Would anyone like to ask a question? Because if so, I just grab one of the microphones and we can hand it out. Are there any questions out there? Is everybody shy and shy?
One question about, so the bald eagle one, have you used the Photoshop process after that?
Let's go to the bald eagle shot. I'm glad somebody noticed that shot. That was a happy accident. So, and this is another favorite place. It's in Santa Cruz. Bald eagles have made, this is the yacht harbor. And I think a couple of years, 2 years ago or so, they actually had a nest right by the yacht harbor. And this bald eagle was flying around, and believe it or not, got harassed by the gulls. The gulls were not happy at all. This is not Photoshop. I have a whole series of the seagulls flying after the bald eagles. There were 2 of them, and there's a sequence of this gull coming closer, closer, but that's a shot, because it looks like it's riding on the back of the eagle, right? But it's not. And you might have seen images where, like, blackbirds will do this. And if you happen to, I shoot at 15 frames per second, and that also takes a lot of editing and time, like you were saying, afterwards. But, and the gulls screaming and the eagles going, man, can't I just, go to my nest and have some peace? They actually eventually left. They were not successful there.
Really quickly, apparently some folks are getting ready to leave, and I thought we'd do a raffle. Does anybody want to pick up a raffle ticket, or should we draw?
How many tickets you got in there? How much are the tickets? You should collect some more. There are not many in there.